And we are here at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel, and the big celebrity chef, the star of this year's Chef Challenge is Guy Fieri, the man who brings you diners, drive-ins, and dives, one of my favorite television programs. A real pleasure.
Well, you've got great taste in TV.
I'll tell you something, my daughter is a huge fan of yours, to the point where she watched one of your episodes and drove to Buffalo to one of the restaurants, I don't recall the name of it, and she came back to me, she said, you know what I had? I said, no, what? She said, I had cheeseburger soup.
Oh, that was a great place. You know, and it was an interesting story about the place. I can't remember the name of it. I've done over 650 locations plus. We just shot here actually in Toronto. But I had a young kid from Make-A-Wish Foundation that was with us that day. And we had a blast because I remember I took him and his brothers and sisters and loaded them up in the Camaro, and we drove up and down the street in front of their parents taking pictures.
That's cool.
So it's neat. It's neat to see that families and make road trips for it and experience that whole adventure in food, because that's what it really is. Food's not just about the consumption of the proteins. It's about, for the energy. It's about the experience.
And that's one of the things I really love about the program is the different places you go to, as opposed to say, well, here's another multi-million-dollar establishment that was just built overnight, and here's another one, and I mean they're all beautiful, but it's like, where's the real character to them?
Well, and we got to remember where those mom and pop joints are. Where these big corporations, these multi-million-dollar came from. They were once a mom and pop joint.
Yeah.
And you got so many things that go through a restaurant. I mean, you got kids going to school, you got families with second incomes, you've got part-time workers, there's a community involvement. I mean, where do people really even spend time interacting with their community anymore? Restaurants.
Yeah, and you'll notice too that a lot of those mom and pop operations, as you say, when there's work to be done within the community, fundraisers, etc.,
where do they
go?
The
first ones to throw up their hands and say, come here, do it here.
Absolutely. And if you think about the history of restaurants, and you think about how things we've done, we have our celebrations there. I mean, the good ones and the bad ones.
True enough.
Birthdays and funerals. I mean, it all happens, and that community restaurant is just so important, and it lends so much. And what unfortunately takes place is we forget that. We take it for granted. And Triple D is one of those shows that highlights these places. And I never knew that we'd be out of the country, coming over to Canada, coming to Toronto. But boy, man, we hit gold when we came here. You guys are.
Where did you go? You went to Kaplansky's Deli?
Oh, have you been to Kaplansky's?
We had them on our show once.
Great guys. Okay, we did Kaplansky's.
They brought tongue.
We did. Listen, I mean, this is a real deal deli.
I know it is.
We did Kaplansky's. We did Hey Meatball. I mean, this guy's got a meatball emporium. We did Roseland, the Roseland Diner, and some duck fries, the poutine or poutin.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, the list goes on, and we just had. You know what the neat thing though is just really great people. Lakeview Diner, Lakeview Restaurant. 80 years old, and I met the gentleman that his dad started it, and I was sitting there talking to him at the counter, and he just had this huge smile on his face that these guys had kind of resurrected this restaurant.
That's right.
It's stories like that, and it's that brings it back. And there was a lady who was sitting there. She goes, I had my first apple pie a la mode at this counter, and she just said it with such passion. And you look at that and you go, wow, that's amazing.
Well, we had them on our show as well, and they were talking about how when they resurrected the place, that there were people in the neighborhood who said, listen, don't screw with this thing. Don't mess with it. So they literally tried to keep it so it looked exactly like it used to. Because a woman came in and she said, I used to come here when I taught school 20 years ago, and this is where we used to come for lunch once a week.
It's so funny. That's exactly what happened. And those guys didn't change anything. They improved things, and they almost scratch make about everything there. I worked with the chef. We shot there late last night. They make this phenomenal apple pie milkshake, which was the funniest thing in the world. It was delicious. We shot a place called The Ace. And the Ace was a diner. It was a restaurant back in the 50s. Then it became a Chinese restaurant, and then it went dark for 30 years.
Wow.
And these two friends opened it up and resurrected it. It's tiny. I'm telling you, it is tiny. Little counter and a few seats, and they make some phenomenal. The chef there makes some phenomenal food, and it's one of these little hole-in-the-wall joints. But you know what it's doing? It's creating jobs. It's bringing taxes to your community. It's bringing a unique culinary perspective. These are all these things, and I've said this, and I hope someone from the tourism board is listening. Toronto needs to promote what fantastic restaurants and the chefs you have. I mean, Mark McEwen, I mean, all these guys that I've met today that are in Toronto doing food, you got to make this a culinary destination.
This is a city which speaks 130 or 140 different languages, and all those languages have their own customs, and all of them have their own food.
That's the key, brother.
If there's a particular nationality or type of food, if you can't find it in Toronto, then it doesn't exist.
Well, and not just that, but the accommodations are great. We're staying at the Hazelton, great hotel, and wonderful people there, and just really friendly people. I think that's another thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing some advertising going on in the States that says, come to Toronto for some dynamite food, and you have a real eclectic mix of food, really nice people. It's a beautiful city, and when we came up here to shoot, we came up here for the fundraiser for Mount Sinai, which is an amazing event, and I said to my Triple D team, let's go up there and shoot diners, drive-ins, and dives, and we've been overwhelmed. We could have shot a month up here.
Yeah, Chef Guy Fieri is with us here for the event. Who came up with the idea? You came up with the idea. How did you come up with that idea?
For diners, drive-ins, dives, that actually wasn't mine. It was a team, and two of the guys are still with the show. A guy named Anthony Rodriguez, another guy named David Canada, and it was a show. And when they first told it to me, diners, drive-in, I couldn't say diners, drive-ins, and dives. That's how I came up with Triple D.
It's a tongue twister.
It is a tongue twister, and I would be screwing up the show several times by going diners, discos, but the beauty as the show has evolved is highlighting these people, and they're just such characters out there.
Well, you have the show has such a great reputation now that any restaurant you approach is going to say, yeah, absolutely, I want to be on.
It wasn't always that way.
Well, I'm thinking when you went to somebody at the outset of this project and said, you want to be on a show that's called something and dives, but you're going to call my place a dive?
So one of the first locations I wanted to shoot when they heard about the show was in Rhode Island, where my wife's family's from. And I said, I went to this hot dog joint, which I love. And I said, hey, we're doing this show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. And they said, well, we're not a diner. And we're not a drive-in, so you're calling us a dive. There's no way in hell we're going to do the show. And I said, wait. Well, long story short, fast forward 3 or 4 years later, they wrote me a letter and said, I think we need to be on the show. And I said, you know what, I'm sorry, that ship's already set sail.
Yeah.
So we never got a chance to have him on, but I think people understand it's just a catchy name. What we're looking for, we're looking for funky joints, we're looking for handmade food, we're looking for family oriented, we're looking for unique, we're looking for a story, but it's got to be real. The food's got to be real. And people ask me all the time, do you like everything you try? No, I don't like everything I try, but if I don't like it, I'm not going to highlight it. Hey, come down and try this place.
Yeah.
That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the positive. I'm not a food critic. I'm not into that game. This is about highlighting these wonderful mom and pop joints. And man, I tell you, the smiles, and you know what the economic impact that it makes to their business?
Oh, it's got to be huge.
Sending their kids to a different college, I'll tell you that much.
It's got to be huge. Speaking of kids, your program that you began in the state of California, where you designate 1 day a year, take your kids into the kitchen day is basically what it is.
And we turned it into now every Sunday in the state of California is Cook With Your Kids Day. And we've passed it in 4 other states. And the whole idea is turning the boat around on the food revolution. I mean, look at what's happening with kids. We've got childhood diabetes, we've got childhood obesity.
Yeah.
And where's it coming from? This processed crap food.
Yeah.
And we think that, well, it says natural and it says organic. It says, you know what it is? As soon as you start processing the food, as soon as you start taking out the natural ingredients in the food or changing it or morphing it, that's where we have the problem. And we didn't have a childhood diabetes and obesity when we were kids.
No, we didn't.
So when did it stop? It stopped when we went to do, and you get me on my soapbox now because kids should not be worrying about obesity. Kids should not be worrying about high blood pressure. Kids should be worrying about, I need to get my ball that I kicked over the fence. That's what a kid needs to be focused on.
That's right. And kids, once you get them into it, we just had Chef Chuck Hughes on, who at the age of 8 enrolled into a cooking class. Right. And that you don't see that you'll see a lot of it now.
Right.
A lot more of it now, thanks mostly to the Food Network, right?
Well, kids are so smart, and we don't give them enough credit. You remember when my dad tells me stories of his grandmother was 13 teaching school when he was a kid, and that kids can do so much more. We start to put them in this little section of they can't do this, they can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not saying give them the sharpest knife you have in the kitchen, have them go cut all the onions, but let them get involved and let them cook the dishes they love. And once they start to feel that success, and that's what my foundation's called, is Guy Fieri's, CWK, Cooking with Kids. And what we're trying to do is just get kids and give them the empowerment, make the decisions. I want to eat this kind of food. I want to eat sauteed chicken versus fried chicken, or I want to eat, salad versus French fries. Those little maneuvers, once they start to feel that success, that is the program. That is getting this revolution in gear.
And you start to understand the importance of nutrition and what you can do with food and the kinds of foods that you should stay away from, i.e. processed crap.
And I tell them all the time, I'm not telling you can't have a cheeseburger anymore. I'm not telling you that you can't have fried chicken anymore. I'm just saying you got to do it in moderation. You got to understand what you're putting. You wouldn't go and put diesel in a gas engine, okay? So you don't go and put processed foods in a little kid's engine. And that's what they are. I have a 7-year-old named Ryder, and he must burn 1 billion calories. So he can have his snacks of his processed stuff. I'm okay with that. But the core fundamental foods, and people say to me, well, how do I get my kids to eat during dinner? Don't give them snacks between lunch.
Yeah.
You know, and of course the kid wants chips. Of course the kid wants crackers. Of course they want all this stuff. But the reality of it is not going to starve to death. And if you want to get a kid to eat real food at the table, have them come to the table hungry. It'll change everything.
That's a good point. Chef Guy Fieri, thank you very much.